Hey y'all, welcome to my Scraplift Spotlight series for the month of September. This month I'm going to focus on another scrapbooker slash designer, and her name is K-I-R-E-I. I don't want to say it because I will probably butcher her name, so I'm going to call her Miss K, and her Instagram site is KIREI65. So playing along with me is my friend Jenny. I'll have a link to her channel below. Please take a watch and see what she scrap lifts. I have no idea what she's going to be doing, so I can't wait to see what she creates this month. So let's take a look at this layout. And I know I have my camera at a kind of weird angle, but I thought you could see the layout best this way. What attracted me to this layout is that tiled background. And I thought, you know what? I can do that. I can give that a try. And it's just kind of going across a diagonal on the page. And then we've got a little piece up here in that corner with some florals, and then we've got some florals in here, some stitching, some splattering, and a little bit of journaling. So this, I believe she used some papers from Pink Fresh Studio, but I am going to use a different paper. But before I show you that, I want to talk a little bit about what your options are if you want to make a layout like this. Okay, so I pulled some papers that I thought might be interesting, or to help give you an idea of what types of paper that you could create that same type of layout. Now this is a tiled paper background by Craft, and it is called Pink Plaster by the Lily and Moss collection. Now you could actually cut these apart, and you don't even have to make them, you know, larger tiles like they are in this layout. You can make them smaller and just use cut out individual tiles here. Now why I say that is because if you wanted to use a block of 4, you'll see that the edges are kind of cut off, so that would kind of interfere with the complete block if that type of thing bothers you, which me it would bother. So like for this paper, I would just cut out individual tiles on this inside piece, and then maybe where the photo covered, you know, I could put some of these pieces in here and there so you don't see that the edge is missing. So that's one option for the paper. And then here's an older piece of paper from Teresa Collins called Hello, My Name Is, and this is from 2014, and this is kind of like a tile background pattern that you could just follow along these lines, these straight lines in here, and cut out like a block of 4, you know, so you have a perfect square. And I really did think about using this paper because I had a great photo that would go with it, but I went with my original idea instead, and I may use this one day for that photo. Now, if you don't have a tiled type paper, you can use any type of pattern paper. I would pick something with a smaller pattern, and then you could just measure and cut your own blocks to use as that background. So you could use a pattern or you know, a small floral print to use as a background. Now this sheet is from Amy Tangerine Brave and Bold. And here's another sheet from that Lily and Moss collection, and it is appropriately called Tiles. And the same thing, you can just cut your own size square that you want. You know, just make sure your measurements are the same on each side to create your own tiled layout. And then one other I pulled for more of a masculine themed is, you know, any kind of smaller design. These are just a bunch of pocket watches from Simple Stories, Simple Vintage Ancestry, and this one is called the 3x4 Elements. So again, just measure out the size square you want and you can use that. But the paper that I decided on was by Paige Evans, because I knew she had something tiled in one of her collections. Now this is the Horizons collection, and this was pretty much my favorite line that she had. And let me find that piece of paper, and then if I need, I have 2 of each sheets. Here it is. I have 2 of each sheet, so if I need another one, I will have it. This is it doesn't have a name on it because I got it out of the paper pad, but this is from 2018. And what I think I'm gonna do is cut out these tiles in four square blocks, and you can see you kind of running into the same issue where you have an edging. You have an edging along the top, this side, and this side, but not on the bottom. So I'm probably not going to use this bottom, so I can still get 3 rows of 3 blocks out of each section of paper, if that makes sense. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'll have some pieces left over. And so for my photo, so what I did first was I picked, for this layout, I picked my paper, which was this one, because I also knew with Paige Evans you have a lot of floral, so I can just go and pull some Paige Evans embellishments, because I'm more of a collection scrapbooker than piecing things together myself, because I don't think I'm very good at it, and I'm not particularly fond of it. But I picked my paper and then I went and looked for a photo, and here's the photo that I found. Now this is my mother-in-law and sister-in-law at an outdoor wedding, and I thought those blues and the blues in their dresses would be perfect. The color match is perfect, and while it is kind of busy because she has on a chevron dress and she has a floral print dress, and then you've got all these tiles in the background, one way to help calm it down a little bit is simply to mat your photo on a piece of plain colored cardstock. Doesn't have to be white, but whatever color you want to use. I could use a darker blue, but you can see that makes a big difference, and it kind of makes your photo pop out a little bit. So that's the layout, the paper that I'm going to do, and the photo that I'm going to use. And the one thing also about Miss Kay's description, she kind of spells out what she does. So if you're not quite sure how to create the layout, she tells you kind of how she put it together. Like she used the pink fresh, she cut it into squares, distressed the edges, put them in a diagonal design on some basil cardstock, which she had added watercolors using the packaging technique. She used gold thread to machine stitch between the squares, added her photos, created the embellishment clusters, and it goes on, but it didn't all print out. So she actually kind of gives you the directions of how she created this layout. So that is my plan, and when I come back, I should have my background paper done, because I am going to do some of this packaging technique, and I'm going to cut out my tiles, put them down, and then I will do some stitching. I don't machine stitch. I have a sewing machine and we don't like each other, so I will do some hand stitching. I don't mind it. I enjoy stitching, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do around each individual block or just around the outsides. It kind of just depends on what I feel like doing at the time. So when I come back, we'll have some progress on the page. Okay, so I am back with my background, and I did a little bit of mixed media, and let me tell you what I did wrong. I went to get a piece of white American Crafts cardstock, and on top of my pack of white cardstock, I had a stack of this authentique paper from their calendar collection set that I had picked up at Tuesday morning, and it had several of these white papers with just the days of the week on it. So I said, I'll just use the back side of that. Well, it's a lot thinner. Well, it's not thinner, it's just a different texture than the cardstock that I normally do mixed media on. You know, so I wasn't thinking, and I have gesso, but I wasn't doing a lot of mixed media, so I wasn't too worried about it, because I know it'll warp or buckle a little bit, but it'll straighten back out. But when I use this paper instead of like Basil or American Crafts cardstock, it warped so bad. It was awful. So what I had to do was take my iron and ironing board and put my iron on high heat, and I put a dish towel on top of it and straightened it out the best I could. So here is the result of my background. So you can see it still is buckled a little bit, and I even backed it on this color cardstock to help with it. And then when I did my stitching, I stitched through both sheets, because normally I would have just stitched through the one sheet and then adhered it, but I stitched through both sheets, and it's still buckled a little bit, but I'll glue it down a lot better once I get close to completion, because right now you know, things aren't glued down real good, because I don't know if I'm going to do any tucking. So I just kind of put a little bit of glue on it so I could do some edge lifting, and I'll fix that before the page is done. So that was my first and I'll tell you my second in just a second, but I wanted to talk about the colors that I use. Now you can use whatever you have on hand. If you have watercolors, acrylic paints, distress inks, whatever, just take a little bit, mix it with some water, and put it on your packaging and just smush it down. And then I went back, and I don't know if you can see it, but I did some flicks of pink and gray, but basically I used the blues and the green, and I just used these right here. And you'll see it's a mix. That's acrylic paint. This is distress paint. And that's distress paint. So these are the colors I use. So just use whatever you have on hand. If you want to do mixed media on your background, it really doesn't matter. Just make sure if you're doing a lot of heavy mixed media that you either gesso it. Understand you're going to have some warping in your paper, but it's all good. So as you can see, I cut apart my tiles, and I did ink around the edges of them with some pumice stone distress ink, just, you know, around the edges here. I had started to distress them and then ink them, but you really couldn't tell a difference, I guess because of the pattern. So I just inked around the edges, and then I ended up stitching around all the blocks except for where my photo is going to go, because I do enjoy stitching, but I don't want to stitch like all this here, down here, around here, there, here, when it's going to be covered up. So I kind of place my photo and know that these areas are going to be covered up. And if you'll also notice, another little boo-boo I made is I have a big gap here, which really doesn't matter because my photo is going to cover it up. But the reason I have the gap is because you can see here when I started my stitching, poking my holes, my line went very crooked. So that would have been too obvious of a mistake when I, did my stitching. Where is it at? It is right here, because you can see that little bitty line. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bitty line where I started going up here, and it was just so crooked. So I ended up moving the block over. So don't ever think that you make a mistake, because you can always find a way to fix it, do something else. Because just like when I did the mixed media background, I thought, well, I'll just start over. And I thought, no, let me put an iron to it and see what happens. So, don't think that you make mistakes. They're happy little accidents. But, so when I come back, I should have my layout done, because basically now it's just to put the photos on it, come up with the title and my embellishments, which I'll fiddle around with that for a little bit. But the reason I added like the pink in the background here in Flex is because, flowers are going to have some pink in it that I'm going to use. So, and in the photo there was some green, in the grass in the background. So that's why I chose those colors. And then the flecks of silver or gray, I used the gray stitching. So basically the thing that's probably will have taken the most time for this layout is the hand stitching, because doing this part of the blocks was very easy. So if you don't want to hand stitch, you don't have to, or machine stitch. You can line stitch. You can just draw a line around it, or you don't have to do anything at all with it. You can just leave it plain like that. That looks good too. So we'll see you in just a bit. Okay, so to complete my page, I just grabbed my pink paisley binder that has my die cuts in it. And it didn't matter what the collection. I was just looking for the colors and style that would go with my layout. And then I pulled my other Paige Evans products, some puffy stickers and chipboard stickers. And this is what I ended up with. So I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. The title, though, is Amy Tangerine. I had a hard time coming up with a title. And as far as the journaling, I don't think I'm really going to journal anything, because there'll be quite a few more layouts that goes along with the story. So not every page has to have writing on it. I'll just annotate the date, maybe right here or here. But as you can see, I pretty much followed Miss Kay's layout. I did a cluster up here, a cluster here, and then a little cluster here. Now I did have these old Studio Calico butterflies. They're mistables. You can mist them, paint them, to change the color of them. But I just left them white because I didn't want it to get too busy, because to me it was busy enough. And I did not add as many embellishments. I'm not a heavy embellisher. I'd say maybe medium at times. But you have to remember, when you look at people's layouts for design teams, their whole purpose is to push the product for the company or for whatever kit. So they use as many products as they can on a page. And even once I heard Amy Tangerine on a podcast say she got rid of a lot of her layouts that she had made for companies and design teams, because they were made to show off product. I like to focus on my photo and highlight my photo, but some people love heavy embellishment. There's no right or wrong way with it. It's just whatever you love to do it. They're your pages, so you do them however you want to. So before I finish this, I thought I'd pull out Miss Kay's layout here, show it to you again. Here's her layout. Here's mine, and I am just pleased as punch with how it turned out. And I want to thank you for watching my first video in this series, and I hope you join me again for the next one. And don't forget to check out Jenny's layout. I'll have a link to her page below. Take a look at it. Please subscribe to her channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.